You don't become unshakable by pretending the world is calm. You become unshakable by preparing for the storm, by expecting it, by standing in the center of chaos and choosing stillness. Marcus Aurelius sat in the tent of war, not in peace. He wrote not because he had time, but because time was vanishing. Each word of Meditations was forged in the fire of real life. Battles, betrayal, plague, death. And yet, he remained calm. This is not a philosophy of escape. This is not good vibes only. This is preparation for reality. The habits you choose in silence will determine how you respond when the noise comes. When the crowd turns against you, when fortune fades, when death sits beside you at the dinner table. If you wait for the world to be stable before you become grounded, you'll never find peace. The Stoics didn't wait. They trained for life the way warriors trained for battle. In solitude, in repetition, in discipline. They practiced silence because the world screams. They practiced detachment because the world clings. They practiced virtue because the world tempts. This is not a path of comfort. This is a path of strength. Let them laugh. Let them misunderstand. Let them call it cold or strange. But let your soul remain anchored, because what's loud is not always strong, and what's silent is not always weak. Habit 1. They master their thoughts before their thoughts master them. Marcus wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Before the world can take your peace, your mind must hand it over, and it often does. In worry, in comparison, in desire for control. But when you stop reacting and start observing, you begin to reclaim power, like a general surveying the battlefield from above. He does not rush into every skirmish. He watches. He waits. He understands. Your mind is not your enemy, but it is your first battleground. If you cannot hold silence in your own head, you will be manipulated by every sound outside of it. The first habit is the daily decision to train your awareness, to listen to the thoughts without becoming them, to detach from emotions and without suppressing them, to question impulses and without shaming yourself for having them. This is the habit of mastery, not domination, but observation, and then intentional redirection. You do not fight thoughts with more noise. You hold them in the light of reason and they lose their shadow. You do not scream back at fear. You sit with it until it gets tired of haunting you. You do not chase the future like a dog after a shadow. You walk with the present, step by step, still, aware, intentional. That is the first silent habit, and it is the foundation for every other. Because until your mind becomes your ally, every achievement will feel hollow. Every win will bring anxiety. Every plan will rest on shaky ground. But when you govern your mind with clarity and restraint, you become your own ruler. You become unconquered. Habit 2. They detach from outcomes but never from effort. The Stoics knew, outcomes are not yours to own. Your actions are, your discipline is, your effort is. You cannot control the harvest, but you can control the planting, the watering, the waiting, and when the rains don't come and the fruit withers on the vine, you do not curse the sky. You return to the field and plant again. That is Stoic power, not the arrogance of control, but the humility of effort, not entitlement to reward, but commitment to process. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," because we chase results before we've even earned the right to suffer for them. We attach our peace to outcomes and wonder why we are never at peace. But when you act with integrity and leave the results to fate, you sleep better, you live better, you suffer less, because you understand failure is not personal, it's universal, and success is not a trophy. It's a byproduct. This habit requires maturity, to work without applause, to show up without guarantee, to give your best. Not because you'll win, but because that's who you are. This is the kind of effort that builds a quiet, unshakable confidence. A strength that does not rise and fall with the market or the likes or the praise. It is stable. It is internal. It is silent. And it is yours. And when others ask why you keep going, when there's no prize, no promise, no audience, you answer without speaking. Because this life is not about performance. It's about presence. It's about principle. You do what is right, not because it will work, but because it is right. That is Stoic discipline, and it is rare. Habit 3. They embrace discomfort as a teacher, not a punishment. What we fear most often holds the key to our growth. Pain sharpens awareness. Uncertainty builds trust. Obstacles reveal the map. Epictetus was born into slavery. He had no freedom, no wealth, no fame, but he had philosophy. He had the power to respond, and that was enough. He said, "Difficulties show men what they are, because character does not come from ease. It is carved by adversity, tested by failure, hardened by cold, mornings and quiet nights of doubt." You want to become mentally unshakable? Then stop avoiding the weight. Start lifting it. Stop resenting the pain. Start learning from it. Stop waiting for life to get easier. Start getting stronger. The Stoic path is not paved in comfort. It is walked in sandals on stone roads. It is written in the dirt, not the clouds. And every time you lean into what scares you, with your eyes open and your breath steady, you grow. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply, silently. Because discomfort is a forge. It burns away illusion. It humbles ego. It clarifies priorities. And when you stop seeing it as punishment, you realize it's preparation for something greater, for someone stronger, for the version of you that doesn't flinch, doesn't beg, doesn't break. That's not pride. That's presence. That's not bravado. That's backbone. And it comes not by accident, but by ritual. You wake up. You face the thing you've avoided. You walk toward it. You feel the fear in your chest and keep going anyway. You shake, but you don't retreat. You sweat, but you don't lie. You fail, but you don't fold. And in the silence that follows, you find something most people never do. Respect for yourself. Not the kind that needs mirrors or medals, but the kind that lets you sit alone in the quiet and feel whole. That is the third habit. It is not glamorous, but it is powerful. Habit 4. They value virtue over validation. What others think is not who you are. Their praise does not make you better. Their criticism does not make you worse. The Stoics believed that virtue, not popularity, is the only true good, not fame, not pleasure, not wealth, but wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. They knew you can be surrounded by applause and still be a coward. You can be draped in gold and still be a slave to your desires. You can be admired and still be empty. But if your choices align with your values, even when no one sees, you are free, you are powerful, you are untouchable. This habit is the hardest in today's world, because we are addicted to being seen. We measure worth in hearts and followers. We crave applause more than growth. But validation is a hungry God. It demands more and more. It never blesses. It only bargains. It sells comfort for your character. And the Stoic says, no deal. He walks away from the crowd, not because he hates them, but because he refuses to need them. He chooses solitude when it's necessary. He chooses integrity when it's hard. He does what is right, even if it looks wrong from the outside. Because his reward is not the approval of strangers. His reward is the strength of knowing, I am who I say I am. That is rare. That is silent. And that is unshakable. And when the world tests you with silence, you do not fill it with noise. You do not rush to post, to prove, to perform. You stand there, steady, and you wait, because you are not living for applause. You are living for alignment with yourself, with the virtues that outlive fame, outlast fear, and outshine gold. That is the fourth habit. It cannot be bought. It must be built. Habit 5. They accept death as the frame that sharpens life. The Stoics looked at death not with dread, but with discipline. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This wasn't morbid, it was motivational. Because when you remember death, you remember to live. Not later, not someday, but now, fully, presently, with urgency, not anxiety, with reverence, not regret. Death is the ultimate silence, and those who fear it most are often the ones who haven't yet learned to sit in silence while alive. You want to be unshakable? Then make peace with the one thing that ends every storm, the end. Look at it, study it, speak of it. Not to romanticize it, but to disarm it, to strip it of the terror it holds over men who waste their lives avoiding it. The Stoics knew it is not death that is to be feared, but a life unlived. And when you embrace mortality, you begin to make different decisions. You stop wasting time arguing with fools. You stop filling your calendar with distractions. You stop chasing things you don't even want, just because they're shiny, loud, or trending. You stop pretending. You are infinite. You are not. You are here, and you are fading. This is not meant to depress you. It's meant to wake you, to open your eyes wider, to hear the breath you've been ignoring, to feel the pulse that reminds you, you are still here. And if you are still here, then what you do next matters. Not to history, not to the masses, but to the person you see in the mirror. Let that be enough. When you no longer need to be remembered, you become unforgettable to yourself. That is the paradox of peace. It is not found by reaching farther. It is found by standing still and seeing clearly how precious this moment is, how little you need, how quickly it will pass, how beautiful it already was. This is what the Stoics practiced every day, not to be numb, but to be awake, not to run from death, but to walk with it, not in fear, but in gratitude. Because death is not the end of meaning, it is the beginning of clarity. And the fifth habit is to carry that clarity into every sunrise until your last. You do not need more time. You need more presence. You do not need to stretch the clock. You need to stop wasting the moment that's already ticking. The Stoics lived with the urgency of the dying, because they were, and so are we. But we forget. We run from this reality. We scroll, we binge, we drift. We chase the illusion of permanence in a world built on impermanence, and so we suffer. Not because life is short, but because we are distracted. We misplace our attention. We waste our finest. Hours on things that don't matter, conversations that go nowhere, emotions that aren't even ours, battles we didn't choose, and expectations we didn't agree to. And we wonder why we feel empty at the end of the day, because we poured ourselves into things that couldn't hold us. This is why the Stoics trained their minds not just to think, but to prioritize, to see what is essential, to say no to the noise, to refuse the false urgency of the world, because not everything that screams is important, and not everything that's quiet is irrelevant. We are conditioned to react, to jump when others say jump, to scroll when others post, to speak when silence would have been wiser, to buy when stillness would have saved us. The Stoics broke that pattern. They didn't live like cattle being herded by impulse and imitation. They lived like sentinels, watching, choosing, guarding the gates of their mind with vigilance. Marcus Aurelius had more power than almost any man alive. And yet he reminded himself daily that power could be taken, that praise could turn to hatred, that empires could collapse in the time it takes for a candle to burn out. So he focused on what could never be taken: his integrity, his reason, his inner freedom. He said, "You can commit injustice by doing nothing, because apathy is not innocence, and silence is not always peace. Sometimes silence is cowardice, and the Stoic knows the difference." The fifth habit is not just to reflect on death, but to let it change how you live, to let it change how you speak, to let it burn away everything that doesn't matter, so that what remains is pure, precise, permanent. You cannot be unshakable if you are cluttered. You cannot be strong if you are scattered. You cannot be wise if you are obsessed with what is temporary. This world will try to convince you that more is better, more attention, more status, more approval. But the Stoic knows, enough is the sweet spot of the soul. Just enough, not less, not more. Just enough for clarity, enough to breathe, enough to sleep without regret, enough to face the mirror without flinching, enough to stand alone without fear, enough to walk away from what no longer fits. This takes courage, because silence is uncomfortable for the loud. Stillness is threatening to the chaotic. Peace feels alien to the anxious. But once you taste it, you can never return to noise willingly. You begin to see how much of the world is built on illusion, how much of ambition is just insecurity in disguise, how much of popularity is just a distraction from purpose. And so you return to your center, and you stay there, not perfectly, not without battle, but with intention. This is where the unshakable are born, not in noise, but in silence, not in public, but in private, not in victory, but in daily choices, to let go of what you can't control, to embrace what you can, to release the need to be understood, to hold fast to the truth anyway, to stop chasing comfort, and start embodying virtue. You do not rise by force, you rise by alignment, with the part of you that is already whole, already wise, already free. That voice within, the still small one you keep ignoring, it has never lied to you. It has only waited for you to turn down the volume of the world. And listen, this is not magic. It's muscle, built in the dark, reinforced in silence, proven in adversity. You don't need more followers. You need more silence. You don't need more possessions. You need more peace. You don't need more validation. You need more virtue. And that begins now, with this breath, this thought, this decision, to return, to choose again, to become aligned. That is the fifth habit, made real, not just remembered, not just admired, but lived. And you will be tempted to forget, to drift again into the fog of busyness, to answer the calls of urgency disguised as importance, to fill the silence with someone else's voice, someone else's priorities. But now you know, now you see the difference between motion and meaning, between noise and necessity. And that awareness is everything. Because when you begin to observe the world through the eyes of a Stoic, you stop being manipulated by it. You are no longer a puppet of algorithms or the slave of someone else's expectations. You are not swayed by every change in the weather, every mood swing of the culture, every opinion thrown like a stone. You become grounded, rooted, not in arrogance, but in clarity. This is what it means to become mentally unshakable. Not that nothing affects you, but that you decide what is allowed to move you. That your emotions are not a wildfire set off by the slightest spark, but a controlled flame, powerful, warm, and contained. That your identity is not handed to you by the crowd, but carved from inner stone. And this brings us to the sixth habit, the quietest, the rarest, the most misunderstood. Habit 6. They cultivate inner stillness, not as an escape, but as a strategy. Stillness is not inaction. It is intelligent restraint. It is the pause between impulse and response. It is the breath before the answer. The stillness of the Stoic is not laziness. It is power under control. like a lion lying still, not because it is weak, but because it knows exactly when to move. Stillness is clarity, and clarity is the foundation of strength. But in a world that never stops, stillness feels like rebellion. You stop checking your phone and suddenly feel behind. You sit quietly in a room and suddenly feel out of place. You resist the urge to reply, to prove, to perform, and suddenly feel invisible. But invisibility is not weakness. It is freedom. To choose when to be seen, to choose what deserves your energy, to choose how your life is shaped from the inside out. This stillness must be practiced, because it will not come naturally. We are wired for distraction. We are trained to chase, to fill, to consume, to compare. And so the Stoic breaks this conditioning, not by force but by habit, daily. They wake up not with panic around, but with presence. They begin their day not with the noise of the world, but with their own thoughts. They journal, they walk, they reflect, not for show, not for posts, but for sanity. Because the day is coming, the pressure, the test, the storm. And when it comes, they do not crumble, because they have trained in silence. Their mind is not scattered, it is set. Their values are not vague, they are carved. Their breath is not shallow, it is steady. Stillness becomes their edge. It allows them to see what others miss, to choose what others ignore, to feel what others suppress. Stillness is not absence of movement, it is mastery of direction. You walk, but you do not run from yourself. You speak, but only when it serves truth. You act, but not out of impulse. This is where the warrior and the philosopher meet, in stillness. Because without it, power becomes reckless. Wisdom becomes noise, and action becomes reaction. The Stoic learns to sit, to wait, to hold, to breathe, to remain composed when everyone else is collapsing, to remain kind when everyone else is cruel, to remain just when everyone else cuts corners, to remain humble when praise comes like a flood, and to remain firm when hate comes like a fire. Stillness is what separates the wise from the reactive, the noble from the chaotic, the I, strong from the loud, and the truly alive from the merely existing. Because stillness allows you to feel the texture of life, the weight of your words before you speak, the intention behind your gaze, the effect of your energy in a room. Stillness does not mean you do nothing. It means you do the right thing, at the right time for the right reason, without needing to shout about it. That is a habit of the highest order, and it cannot be learned in noise. It must be forged in solitude, where you meet yourself, where you hear your conscience again, where you come face to face with the things you've been avoiding, and you stay, you breathe, you soften your resistance, and you listen. That is where truth lives, not in shouting matches, but in sacred stillness, not in debates, but in deliberate silence, not in declarations, but in disciplined observation. You become unshakable, not because you are louder, but because you are rooted in a deeper quiet, a clarity untouched by chaos, a discipline unbent by discomfort, virtue unshaken by victory or loss. And when you begin to live this way, not talk about it, but embody it, you will find that the storms still come, but you will not be moved. You will find that the world still burns with noise and ego and distraction, but you are no longer flammable. You are no longer reactive. You are no longer swayed. You are still, not empty, but full, not passive, but potent, not distant, but discerning, because your life is no longer about chasing outcomes. It is about becoming the kind of person who remains whole, no matter the outcome. And that kind of person, that kind of soul, that kind of presence is rare, as noble, as stoic. And now that you've seen the stillness, now that you've touched it, felt it, you realize how much you've been missing it your entire life. How noise had become your normal, how distraction had become your comfort, how busyness had become your identity. But underneath all of that, there was always a quiet voice, the one that didn't need approval, the one that didn't seek applause, the one that wasn't trying to impress anyone, just trying to be whole. You abandoned it once, maybe 100 times, but it never left you. It waited through your triumphs, through your breakdowns, through your reinventions and your regrets. That voice, that still, clear whisper in your chest. It is your essence, and the Stoics knew to ignore it is to betray yourself. You can build empires, win crowds, earn titles, but if you lose that voice, you lose everything. That's why the Stoics called their philosophy a return, not a becoming, but a remembering. Remembering who you are when no one is watching, when there is no reward, when it's just you, alone, in silence. And what you choose to do then? That is who you are, not your ideas, not your Instagram, not your resume, your actions, in private, in pressure, in principle. That's your true reflection. That's your soul speaking. And if you can build your life around that, then you are unbreakable. Because no market can take that from you. No insult can shrink it. No failure can erase it. Because you didn't borrow it, you built it. From discipline, from fire, from honesty, from refusal to lie to yourself, even when it would have been easier. And this brings us back to where we began. To the 6 silent habits that build a mind like stone, but not a cold stone, a warm one, lit from within. Because being mentally unshakable does not mean you're unfeeling. It means your feelings are refined, matured, tempered. It means your emotions serve you. They don't enslave you. Your impulses kneel to your principles. Your moods yield to your mission, and your comfort bends to your character. Let others chase what they want. You guard what you are. Let others sprint toward every opportunity. You walk with wisdom. Let others demand answers. You seek understanding. Let others reach for power. You hold on to purpose. Let others build kingdoms. You build a conscience. And this will not be popular. You will not trend for this. You will not go viral for being still. But you will sleep at night. You will wake with clarity. You will walk into rooms with quiet strength. Not arrogance, not flash, but depth. People won't know how to describe it. They'll call it presence, grounded, calm. But what it really is self-mastery. It's stoic, born of habits so silent, most will overlook them. But they are the habits that hold you together when life tears at your seams. They are the rituals that keep you honest when no one's watching. They are the roots that dig deeper while others scramble higher. And that's what makes you different. That's what makes you free. Because in the end, the Stoics never promised you ease. They promised you strength. Not that the fire would go out, but that it wouldn't consume you. Not that the winds would stop, but that you would remain unmoved. And in this world, full of noise, distraction, fear, temptation, ego, manipulation, to remain unmoved is power. To remain still is strategy. To remain honest is rebellion. To remain virtuous is rare. To remain you. In a world that keeps trying to remake you, that is victory. That is stoicism. And that is the kind of strength no one can give you. No one can hand you. No one can fake. You earn it, you build it quietly daily in the shadows, in your choices, in your silence. And maybe now you understand why the Stoics trained in silence. Why they sat in solitude. Why they wrote without audience. Why they prepared not to impress the world but to survive it and remain whole. It was never about escaping suffering. It was about meeting it with strength. Not flinching, not folding. Not becoming the kind of person who needs life to be easy in order to feel alive. The world breaks those who expect comfort. It devours those who wait for it to be fair. But the Stoic does not wait. He becomes ready, because life does not owe you peace, but you owe it to yourself to build peace. inside. That's why the silent habits are not just tools. They're armor. They are shields for your soul and weapons for your mind, not to harm, but to hold, not to fight others, but to face yourself. And when you truly understand this, you begin to change, not in showy ways, but in deep, structural, unshakable ways. You speak less and mean more. You chase less and become more. You argue less and listen more. You resist less and accept more. You let go of the illusion that things must go your way to be right. You abandon the lie that people must understand you to be valid. You stop negotiating with your conscience. You live by inner law, and this makes you dangerous, meaning in the most beautiful way. Because when a man no longer needs the world's permission to live rightly, he becomes impossible to corrupt. He cannot be seduced by flattery. He cannot be crushed by criticism. He cannot be bought nor sold nor owned. He is not reckless. He is rooted. He does not yell to be heard. He speaks when it matters. He does not scramble for attention. He cultivates excellence in silence. He does not build for applause, he builds to endure. And so when the winds come, and they always do, he does not pray for calm. He prays for clarity. When the battle comes, and it always does, he does not run. He prepares. When the losses come, and they will, he does not fall apart. He remembers who he is. This is not mythology. This is not legend. This is habit, built from small choices, hard decisions, quiet mornings, long nights, and the daily discomfort of not betraying your values for short-term gain. Because the Stoic understands, there is no peace in pretending. There is no strength in escaping. There is no freedom in avoidance. The path is narrow. It is not easy, but it is clear. It leads you back to stillness, back to virtue, back to discipline, back to presence, back to the one thing the world cannot fake: character. And when you live from character, everything changes. You stop asking, what will they think? You ask, is this right? You stop chasing what's next. You master what's now. You stop needing to be understood. You understand yourself. You stop begging for the world's love. You love who you are when you're alone. And that's what makes you powerful. That's what makes you permanent in a world addicted to the temporary. You are no longer owned by outcomes. You are driven by essence. You are no longer seduced by comfort. You are rooted in clarity. You are no longer afraid of failure, because you no longer measure your worth by success. You have become what few ever do: whole, unshakable, enough. Not because the world told you so, but because you remembered who you were before the world told you who to be. And now you walk differently. You don't rush. You don't stumble over your own urgency. You don't fidget under the pressure to be more, do more, prove more. You have returned to yourself. And in that return, you found something no one can give you, and no one can take. That kind of strength. It makes others curious. They won't understand it at first. They'll think it's arrogance. They'll think it's indifference. But time will reveal it for what it is: self-possession, inner mastery. A life anchored from within. Because when you stop borrowing your identity from the outside world, you begin to live from a deeper code. A code written not on screens, but in silence. Written in your soul before the noise arrived. And the more you follow it, the more you realize you never needed anything else. You needed discipline. You needed honesty. You needed patience. You needed stillness. And you needed to sit with the discomfort of not being who others expected you to be. Because the truth is, you were never meant to fit. You were meant to align, and alignment doesn't always look pretty. It looks like saying no when you're expected to say yes. It looks like walking away from things that sparkle but poison you. It looks like setting boundaries that make people uncomfortable. It looks like letting people misunderstand you and not rushing to correct them. Because your peace is no longer for sale. Because your values are not on trial. Because your soul is no longer starving for applause. You've tasted something better. You've tasted clarity. And now, like Marcus Aurelius, you write your thoughts not for likes, but for life. You sit with your fear not to banish it, but to understand it. You greet each day not with anxiety, but with intention. And even when chaos surrounds you, you are not reactive. You are ready. Because readiness is not a condition of your environment. It's a commitment in your bones. It's the way you hold yourself when no one's watching, the way you speak when your voice shakes, the way you keep your word, especially when no one will know, the way you suffer with dignity, the way you win with humility, the way you live with depth in a shallow world. This is what Stoicism teaches us. Not how to avoid pain, but how to carry it with grace. Not how to become numb, but how to feel fully, without becoming enslaved to the feeling. Not how to dominate others, but how to lead yourself. Because the most dangerous man is not the one who controls others, it's the one who controls himself. His thoughts, his desires, his reactions, his path. And the more you live this way, the more you begin to understand. Freedom was never about escaping pressure. It was about becoming someone who could withstand it. Peace was never about eliminating stress. It was about learning not to collapse under it. Success was never about getting what you want. It was about becoming someone worthy of what matters. And now, when you look back at the life you were once chasing, the image of who you thought you had to be, you feel a kind of grief, not sadness, but gratitude. Gratitude that you outgrew that mask, that you burned the costume, that you no longer need the stage. You just need the truth, and you've built a life around it. Quietly, deliberately, habit by habit, choice by choice. One moment of inner clarity at a time. This is what the world will never understand about you. Why you're calm when others panic. Why you're kind when others are cruel. Why you're focused when others are scattered. Why you're content when others are endlessly chasing. It's not that you've figured everything out. It's that you've stopped pretending you need to. You've stopped outsourcing your peace. You've stopped renting your self-worth from strangers. And now you live by a standard the world didn't give you, which means the world can't take it away. You are not above the storm. You are simply not defined by it. You've become the kind of person who doesn't flinch when things fall apart, not because it doesn't hurt, but because pain no longer confuses you. You understand it now. You've studied it. You've listened to it. And you know, it doesn't mean something is wrong. It means something is real. And in a world full of fake smiles and hollow victories, reality is a rare gift. You take it. You feel it. You walk with it. You stop resisting what is, and you begin responding with who you are. That's what Stoicism does. It shifts the entire axis of your existence, from outside in to inside out, from reactive to reflective, from compulsive to conscious. You no longer ask the world to be easier. You ask yourself to be stronger. You no longer measure your day by outcomes. You measure it by alignment, by how closely your actions reflect your values, by how gently you held your anger, by how clearly you saw your thoughts, by how intentionally you spoke your truth. And this changes everything. It changes your energy. It changes your relationships. It changes the quality of your thoughts, the weight of your words, the stillness of your presence. People feel it, even when they don't understand it. They feel your steadiness, your restraint, your clarity, your depth, and they wonder where it comes from. It doesn't come from books. It doesn't come from hacks. It doesn't come from motivational bursts or loud declarations. It comes from showing up for yourself in silence, over and over again, when it's not glamorous, when it's not easy, when no one claps for you, when no one even notices, and that's the point. Because you're not doing it to be seen. You're doing it to see yourself. You're doing it to stay whole in a world that keeps breaking itself. You're doing it because you made a vow, quietly, to live aligned, even if no one ever applauds. Especially then. That's what makes it real. That's what makes it yours. And now, when challenges come, you don't collapse. You pause, you breathe, you observe, you remember. You remember your training. You remember your habits. You remember your stillness. You remember that your value doesn't depend on the situation. It depends on your response to it, and you choose, not perfectly, but powerfully. And when you fail, because you will, you do not spiral. You do not shame. You do not lie. You simply begin again, quietly, without theatrics, without delay, without permission. Because your strength is not in never falling. It's in never staying down. It's in the quiet discipline of rising, and rising, and rising again, without fanfare, without applause, without the need to explain. This is the kind of mental fortitude that cannot be taught in noise. It must be earned in solitude, forged in fire, and carried without arrogance. That is what makes you different. That is why you now walk slower, speak less, listen deeper, choose wiser. Because you know the cost of distraction. You've paid it. You know the emptiness of ego. You've tasted it. You know the sickness of seeking approval. You've drowned in it, and you've chosen something better. You've chosen a different path, not an easier one, but a real one, a path that leads not to more, but to enough, not to applause, but to alignment, not to comfort, but to clarity, not to validation, but to virtue. You've chosen to follow the invisible thread that connects discipline to peace, that ties restraint to power, that binds stillness to freedom. And that thread, it's fragile at first, but now it's steel. Because you've reinforced it with action, because you've chosen it when no one else would, because you've sacrificed convenience for truth, because you've remembered what matters when others forgot. And now, you carry a kind of peace that's not easy to explain, but impossible to ignore. Not loud, not flashy, not performative, just present, grounded, certain, like a mountain that does not move when the sky turns black. You do not bend for storms. You do not beg for shelter. You become the shelter, for others and for yourself. And now you become the one people lean on when things fall apart. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've become the kind of person who can hold the weight. Not fix it, not explain it, but hold it. And that is enough. Because sometimes, the greatest power is not what you say, but how you stand. Not what you know, but how you stay calm when others lose their grip. You become a refuge, a quiet reminder that it's possible to feel the storm and not become the storm, to walk through chaos and remain composed, to be in pain and still choose to be kind. This kind of strength is silent. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't posture. It doesn't need recognition, because it is not built on validation. It's built on values. And those values, they are now etched into your daily choices, into how you carry yourself in rooms where others perform, into how you listen when others talk over each other, into how you say no when others chase every yes, into how you don't flinch at rejection, because your worth is no longer a debate. You are anchored, and when you're anchored, you are not easily moved. Not by trends, not by opinions, not by outcomes. Because your compass is internal now. You don't drift, you don't spin, you don't scatter. You are still and strong, and the world feels it. It won't always say it, but it feels it. The room changes when you enter, not because you're loud, but because you're rooted. There's no scramble in your step, no hunger in your gaze, no desperation in your words. You're not here to take. You're here to hold, to witness, to remind. That strength isn't always in action. Sometimes it's in restraint. That courage isn't always in speaking. Sometimes it's in silence. That leadership isn't always in commanding. Sometimes it's in presence. And now, you lead, even when you don't try. Because real leadership doesn't require a stage. It requires integrity, and integrity doesn't shout. It simply doesn't bend. Even when the pressure is high, even when it's easier to fake, even when everyone else is doing it. You've become the exception. the quiet one in the back of the room. The one who doesn't flinch when challenged. The one who doesn't panic when plans fall apart. The one who doesn't react but responds. Not because you're better, but because you've trained, because you've chosen discomfort over denial. Virtue over vanity, presence over popularity, and truth over convenience. And that training shows, not in trophies, but in peace, not in praise, but in poise, not in possessions, but in presence, because nothing external can compete with the power of a mind at peace with itself. You've made that peace your priority. You've made that stillness your practice. And now, no matter what life throws at you, you do not become less. You become more calm, more focused, more aware, more real. And when others ask how, you won't give them a trick. You'll give them the truth, that you sat with your pain until it stopped controlling you, that you faced your weaknesses until they stopped frightening you, that you stopped running from yourself and finally came home. Home to your values, home to your breath, home to your strength. You do not escape anymore, you endure. You do not fake anymore. You feel. You do not perform anymore. You live, and you carry this into everything, into how you walk, into how you love, into how you work, into how you rest. And now, even your rest has power, because it's not restless, it's earned. Even your silence has presence, because it's not avoidance, it's understanding. Even your stillness has motion, because it's not frozen, it's conscious. That is what makes you different. Not louder, not flashier, just more deliberate, more sovereign, more aligned. And now, even your presence teaches. Not because you preach, but because you live it. You walk into chaos and bring order, not with commands, but with calm. You sit in silence and make others feel safe, not by fixing their pain, but by not fleeing from it. You do not react, you respond. You do not control, you carry, you do not conquer. You clarify, because you've stopped trying to prove anything. You're no longer performing strength, you've become it. And the world takes notice, not immediately, not loudly, but deeply. They won't always say it, but they'll feel it. Your posture, in your timing, in your refusal to be pulled into battles that don't matter, in your ability to speak with restraint when ego would rather explode, in your discipline to do the small things when no one's looking, because that's what you've learned. Greatness is not in grand moments, it's in the repetition of small, silent, sacred habits, done in darkness, done without praise, done because they're right. You make your bed not for order, but for alignment. You walk early, not for fitness, but for clarity. You write not for others, but to understand your own mind. You pause before you speak, not to impress, but to ensure the words reflect your values, and this life you now live. It begins to reflect back to you everything you used to chase. But now it arrives not in chaos, but in flow, because the world gives to those who no longer need. And that's what you've become, needing nothing, anchored in everything, still in motion, present in purpose. You don't escape adversity, you enter it on your terms. You don't collapse under failure, you extract wisdom from it in silence. You don't parade your wins, you absorb them with humility, because you know all of it is temporary. The praise, the pain, the problems, the progress, they pass like weather. And you are not the sky that changes, and you are the mountain beneath it. Stoic, steady, quietly powerful. This is not immunity to emotion, it's maturity with emotion. It's feeling fully without drowning. It's knowing deeply without needing to dominate. It's caring greatly without losing yourself. Because now you understand, peace is not passive. It is built moment by moment, thought by thought, habit by habit. And now you carry it into the world. You become the lighthouse, not because you avoid storms, but because you've been through them and chose not to shatter. You become the anchor, not because life is steady, but because you've learned to be steady within it. You become the flame, not the one that burns wildly, but the one that warms a room without smoke. And all of this, all of it, began with the choice to live different, to stop chasing the loud life, to start building the deep one. You don't walk the same. You don't speak the same, because you don't think the same. Your mind is no longer your master. It's your ally. Your breath is no longer shallow. It's your compass. Your actions are no longer scattered. They are aligned with a silent truth that can't be posted, sold, or copied. It can only be lived. And now that you live it, you've become free, not from life, but within it. Free from the need to impress, free from the trap of comparison, free from the hunger to always prove. And in that freedom, you rise, quietly, deliberately, without fireworks, without headlines. Just a calm fire behind your eyes, a kind word on your lips, a stillness in your spine. You no longer ask, how do I win? You ask, how do I remain whole? And when you ask that question, really ask it, you realize winning was never the point. Becoming was. Becoming someone who doesn't trade truth for convenience. Someone who doesn't chase more at the day, cost of peace. Someone who doesn't betray themselves just to belong. Someone who doesn't perform strength, but radiates it, silently. That is who you are now, not someday. Now, because you chose, and you're choosing again. With every breath, with every pause, with every deliberate step. This is not motivation, it's transformation. It's a return to what was always inside you, to what was waiting beneath the noise, to what no one could give you but what you always had the power to build. And now that you've returned, you no longer need to announce it, you no longer seek to explain, you simply live. As one who has remembered, who has refined, who has released everything that was never truly you, you carry stillness like a sword, not to cut but to guard what is sacred. Your peace, your clarity, your alignment. You've stopped negotiating with noise. You've stopped chasing what pulls you away from presence. You've stopped filling the silence with what was never meant to stay. And now, silence is no longer scary. It is sanctuary. Discomfort is no longer a threat. It is your teacher. Pain is no longer a punishment. It is part of your sculpting. And time is no longer an enemy. It is your reminder that every breath matters, that every choice counts, that nothing is promised, and because of that, you live with urgency but not haste, with purpose but not pressure, with fire but not frenzy. This is your life now, not perfect but powerful, because it is built from the inside out, because it is lived on principle, not popularity, because it is shaped by character, not circumstance. And even when the storms return, even when the noise rises, even when everything feels uncertain again, you remain still unshaken, because you did not build your peace on the sand of external validation. You built it on the stone of inner mastery, and no wave can move that, no critic can shake that, no failure can dissolve that. You've become the kind of presence that rewires rooms, that awakens the weary, that restores the lost, without saying a word. Not because you are special, but because you are steady. You no longer pretend to know everything. You embody what matters. You no longer perform strength. You've become it. You no longer chase light. You carry it, quietly, deliberately. You walk with the discipline of one who no longer needs approval. To act with virtue, you move with the confidence of one who has faced themselves and stayed. You act with the humility of one who knows the cost of clarity, and you rise every single day without waiting for motivation, without waiting for permission, because the habits are built, because the values are planted, because the silence has become your source. And now, when others ask where your strength comes from, you don't need to answer. You just live. You just breathe. You just choose, again and again, to remain, to return, to rise, to lead, not with noise but with presence, to build, not with force but with integrity, to serve, not with ego but with empathy, to endure, not with bitterness but with grace. And when you fall, because you will, you do not quit. You remember. You remember that your strength was never in how loud you were. It was in how still you became when the world got loud. It was in how deeply you listened before you spoke. It was in how often you chose to remain true when the world begged you to betray yourself. That is Stoic strength. That is unshakable character. That is the quiet power the world forgets, but you will not. Because now, you are it. You carry it, and you walk forward, not to be seen, but to serve, not to prove, but to embody, not to win, but to become. And in that becoming, you are no longer afraid. You are no longer unsure. You are no longer lost. You are here, you are ready. You are whole, and above all, you are silent, but unstoppable.